Hello and welcome to Tov TV's podcast Israel How to Win. Every now and then we encounter a personality that needs to confront intolerance in the academia and other fields, and those instances from time to time bring those personalities and with them an entire audience to very interesting insights. Such a person with us tonight is Professor Pransisko from Penn. In terms of racism, is it fair to say that the premise in all those outlets that you mentioned and others is that if there is a racist in this conflict, it is the Jews, the Zionists, that practice colonialism and ethnic cleansing either by actions or by motivation upon the disenfranchised native Palestinians of this land. This is the narrative, this is the premise in which academics and journalists in the States, in the mainstream media in the States, discuss this conflict.
Yeah, well, not only in the mainstream media, but in the universities, right? So professors in the social sciences and humanities almost universally insist on the model where the Arab-Israeli conflict is a consequence of Jewish intolerance, Jewish conquest,
supremacy,
Jewish supremacy, Jewish intransigence with cooperating with the national aspirations of the Arab Palestinians and so forth. This was the dominant model. And it was also my model because I was learning it from these academics who worked at the think tank and also from the mainstream media. So, but when I started doing my own historical research, what I found, and I found this in just a couple of weeks of work, I mean, it was all in the library and on the internet, is that the founding father of the Arab-Palestinian movement, Hajj Amin al-Husseini, had actually organized enormous terrorist attacks against the Jews of the Yishuv, in other words, the Jews living in British Mandate Palestine before the creation of the State of Israel. And the fourth terrorist attack organized by Husseini, again, the founding father of the Arab-Palestinian movement, called the Arab Revolt. This went from 1936 to 1939. That terrorist attack was organized with weapons sent by Adolf Hitler and Mussolini. And after that, he traveled to Iraq, where he was treated as if he were some kind of head of state. Mm-hmm. They made him into some kind of cabinet minister with a budget and a bureaucracy. And he used that power to organize the Farhud, which was the destruction of the Jewish community in Baghdad. And then he travels to Italy, where Mussolini receives him as a head of state, and to Berlin then, where Adolf Hitler receives him also as a head of state, with all the pomp and circumstance and the cameras rolling and all the dignitaries out to receive him. And they had a very important meeting. They sat to plan together the extermination of the Jews living in the Middle East. Now that didn't happen because the Nazis were stopped at El Alamein in Egypt, but Husseini remained in Europe for the duration of the war. He arrived in late 1941, in the autumn of 1941, and he remained there. And he played a leading role. He was also given a cabinet position. He was given a bureau. It was called Bureau des Gros Mufti. It was a bureaucracy that he ran.
But it was a part of the SS. It wasn't part of the Reichsgovernment. It wasn't civilian. It was a military position.
Yes, and he was recruiting thousands of Muslims to Heinrich Himmler's SS. Right. So he recruited thousands of Muslims to giant divisions of the SS that participated in the Yugoslav chapter of the Holocaust. And he also had a leading role in the administration of the death camp system together with Adolf Eichmann. So we're talking about, again, the founding father of the Arab-Palestinian movement. When I learned all of that, I changed my mind, because before that I had been a supporter of the two-state solution. But once I saw all of this...
The PLO and the PA are currently the only living branch of the trunk that was the Nazi Party. The Nazi Party was destroyed. It is completely irrelevant in global politics right now, except from the PLO and the PA.
You're wrong about that.
Am I wrong about it? Okay. So correct me, please.
You're wrong about that, because Christopher Simpson documented historian Christopher Simpson documented in 1988 that the CIA was created by absorbing tens of thousands of German Nazi war criminals. tens of thousands. Don't confuse this with Operation Paperclip, which was to bring about 1,000 scientists for NASA. No, that's not what I'm talking about. This is a
Nazi
separate,
ideologues?
No, this is the entire intelligence infrastructure of Foreign Armies East, Fremde Heer Ost, which was run by Nazi General Reinhard Gehlen. Okay, so what Christopher Simpson did is he managed to obtain a bunch of documents through the Freedom of Information Act that allowed him to establish that immediately after the war, instead of, once they captured Reinhard Gehlen, instead of trying him in Nuremberg, they asked him to recreate Hitler's intelligence infrastructure in Eastern Europe, and they absorbed it, and that became the CIA. Okay, but not only that. In 1956, yeah, this is still mostly unknown. In 1956, the CIA told the West German government that they now had to adopt the Gehlen organization as their own CIA, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, which is the BND, the equivalent of the CIA in West Germany. Reinhard Gehlen became the head of intelligence with his Gehlen org in West Germany. In other words, the German Nazis were returned to clandestine power in West Germany by the United States in 1956.
Okay, but I have to, if such a powerful organization has Nazi bent, it would show up in the 70 years between the end of the war and now.
Okay, let's review that, because you and I just got done saying that PLO Fatah was created by the exterminator of the European Jews, Hajj Amin al-Husseini. Well, PLO Fatah is the organization that the Oslo process brought into militarily strategic territory of the Jewish state. Who would do that to the Israeli Jews? Only the enemies of the Jews would do that. Why would you bring into the Jewish state, into militarily strategic territory, an organization created by the Nazi butcher of the European Jews?
First of all,
isn't that an attack on Israel?
It is, but I must say that I understand what you're going with. It's basically
because the U.S. government did that.
This is where I disagree with you. I believe that the CIA pushed for it. They pushed, but when you have prominent Israelis look the other way on the Nazi bent, on the Nazi inclination of those people, and Americans that do not have any skin on the game, say, okay, they look the other way. Who are us to remind those Jews that they're actually Nazis?
Fine. So let's separate the issues. Yeah. Now you say, but what about the people running Israel? That's what you're saying, right? And I'm saying, well, I think that the people who want to destroy the Jewish state would certainly be interested in corrupting the people running the Jewish state, so that they could maneuver the Jewish state into a more vulnerable position that would allow the enemies of the Jewish state to destroy it. So it seems to me that if the evidence shows the people running Israel cooperating with the process to destroy Israel, the first hypothesis should be that the enemies of Israel are managing to corrupt the people running Israel. Why isn't that a reasonable model?
How do you think we should move on from there? What should Israeli leaders, what should Israeli voters know about or presume to be doing in the current situation?
Well, I think the first thing that Israeli voters should know is what the PLO Fatah really is. The Jewish state was created to protect the Jewish people from Nazi-style genocide.
This is one of the goals. It's important to emphasize.
The most important one.
No, I disagree. No? I strongly disagree with it. The Jewish state is the manifestation of the Jewish nationality of 3,500 years old.
Okay.
This is what it is. And it is beyond collateral benefit that this keeps us safe from anti-Semitism to whatever form, be it Nazism in the 20th century or Inquisition in the 16th century or whatever. It is a collateral benefit, but it is not the essence or the justification for the founding of Israel. This is the national state of the nation that conceived the concept of nationalism and gave it to the world.
The thing we need a hypothesis for is why the Israeli public was not told what the origin of PLO Fatah was when they were asked to support the Oslo process.
It was actively muted. It is not only
it was
actively muted.
It was suppressed. Now, why? What is the reason? How can we explain that the people running the Jewish state did not want Israeli citizens to know that they were bringing German Nazis into militarily strategic territory of Israel?
We started this conversation with the fact that you researched the mental inclination of people who have racist tendencies.
Yes.
When I have dialogues with my leftist friends here from Israel, I understand the tendency. The left, or at least the Israeli left, is obsessed with having a dialogue with someone. And if this is the case, they have every motivation. They see their own ideological fulfillment in having this dialogue. And if the person you are dialoguing with is a Nazi, then there is no way to justify the dialogue itself. So the motivation is, as I said, to suppress those uncomfortable facts. Okay. And we know that this practice of denial, your origins is psychology, so I believe that you are quite familiar with the mental mechanisms of denying things that you are uncomfortable with. In the mental level, in the cognitive level, people ignore facts that contradict the main course of what they're doing.
Fine.
I know because I'm learned in history, and many in the Israeli right now know those facts, know that in its essence the Palestinian idea is a Nazi idea. It was an illegitimate thing to say because, let's say, in the late 80s and early 90s in Israel, there were still many Holocaust survivors among us, and to them, to mention the Nazi name in any context other than directing your finger specifically to Nazism was something that was supposed to be unheard of. It was very easy to suppress it in a climate when you cannot say Nazi against anything which is not Nazism itself as it was in Germany.
Well, I think if I were giving advice, I would say Israelis need to identify which candidate, which person proposing to become prime minister is promising to clean house.
There needs to be an investigation about the motivation of many Israeli personalities and organizations and political movements to legitimize and to clear the Palestinian movement out of this completely proven and completely based accusation about its affiliation with the Nazi party. And the thesis that you bring to the table is maybe some entity, some organization with connection to the Nazi party itself has motivated via or through financial means those Israeli figures to do that. Right. This is a very interesting insight, very interesting angle to view the past few decades and the way that the conflict was managed. I must admit that for me, as someone who is to some extent involved as a journalist and as an activist in Israel, it brings up some questions because I don't need corruption or financial corruption to explain the motivations and the inclinations of the people on the other political side. I understand what's going on in their minds. They explained it to me quite right. And I cannot believe that so many people are on the payroll of Qatar or whomever. Okay, so
maybe we need a more complex model. So maybe some people have been corrupted and other people have been given a false narrative by the people who have been corrupted. Right?
So this makes more sense. It also aligns with your story and similar stories in American academia. And what is supposed to be the stronghold of freedom of expression, and free mind. How come that you experience what you've experienced? And the answer is, well, we know that Qatar and other oil empires are heavily invested in the American academia, and the result of that is that it is way easier to get tenureship, to get senior positions in the academia if your work supports, be it the ideology or the interests. PLO Fatah, and in general, Marxist ideology that weakens the West in general.
The last piece of advice I would give is Israel absolutely needs to invest in weapons independence.
Yeah.
The fact that Israel has to beg the U.S. to send it weapons means that it is at the whim of U.S. foreign policy, and as we've seen, U.S. foreign policy is anti-Israeli. So Israel urgently needs weapons independence so that it doesn't have to have its foreign policy subordinated to whatever the anti-Semites that run the State Department want Israel to do.
Thank you very much for being with us, and I'd like to thank our audiences as well, and to encourage you not only to visit the aforementioned resources that Professor Gilwhite just recommended, but also the other content here that we have at Tov TV in English, various outlets. I'm Ziv Moore. Thank you very much for being with us, and until next time, have a good one.